So this is our stressed out panel, and it's really about the impact of stress on you and your canine. And I'd like to introduce our very illustrious speakers that we have. Starting next to me is Allie Rogers. Allie is a PhD candidate in neuroscience. She works with Dr. Tracy Bale, and their focus is the long-term and intergenerational effects. I find this very relevant with puppies on the way. What impact of stress on mom actually show up in the puppy? So it's really kind of mind-boggling that we can have such long-term effects of stress and other things. And so Allie's going to be able to represent that. Dr. Nami Goyal is a research associate professor of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, and she studies sleep. And different aspects of sleep and sleep deprivation. And as I was talking to her this morning and kind of mumbling, having been up with Ziza watching her all night waiting for puppies, I feel very personally affected by her topic. And so we're looking forward to that. Dr. James Serpell, I think probably everybody knows Dr. Serpell, maybe not in person, but by his publications, his books. He is the Marie A. Moore Endowed professor in animal ethics and welfare at the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine, where he teaches veterinary ethics, applied animal behavior and welfare, and human-animal interactions. He has been a collaborator of ours, and we really enjoy working with him. And he's got some great information that he's going to be able to share on aspects of stress on a number of different levels. And I won't put expect you to share anything from the study we're still working on analyzing the data on. So,
a couple of clips from some tests we developed for various guide and assistance dog organizations, and I'm just going to show you two clips. One is a clip of a dog in a test that involves essentially the dog and the handler are walking down a sidewalk, and a large black plastic bag stuffed with newspaper accidentally falls off the wall beside them or just in front of them as they're walking along, and you see the dog's reaction to that stressor. And then the other one is what I'd call an invasive handling test, where an unknown handler, somebody who's not known to the dog, does almost like a medical examination of the dog, and you just watch the dog's reaction. So the reason, and I've cherry-picked these two clips because they illustrate quite well differences in how dogs react to stress. And the point I think I want to get across at the beginning is that some dogs seem to be quite activated by stress. In other words, the behavioral changes they show involve an increase in activity. The dog rushes around, it shows displacement behavior, it does a lot of referencing to the handler. It doesn't look all that anxious. The tail may be wagging, but it's still stressed. And then the other type of dog is the dog that becomes very inhibited, that seems to sort of shut down in response to stress. And you can see it in these two clips, even though I freely accept these are different types of tests, and it would have been much better if I'd found examples of dogs reacting differently to the same.
Okay, I actually don't have any clips, but I actually want to follow up on the point that you're making. So we study healthy humans in the laboratory, and we impose sleep restriction on these individuals, and we look at what happens to them. And actually, sleep loss is considered a major stressor. We see that sleep loss and stress both produce very similar things. Sleep deprivation can produce stress, stress can produce sleep deprivation, and the two interact with each other. But one thing, and we can talk more about that, but one thing that we also notice is there are large individual differences, just like what you're showing here, that some individuals do not appear to respond to sleep deprivation. They tend to perform as if they have had a whole night of sleep, and this is even true if you do consecutive nights where you deprive someone of sleep or you keep them up all night. And we look at this through behavioral testing. And then if you give them a stressor, for example, asking them to give a 3-minute speech in front of an audience of people that they don't know, a Trier social test, you see in most people cortisol spikes, particularly if they're already sleep deprived. You even see more enhanced effect, but not in everybody. So there are people who do not respond to even a combination of stress and sleep deprivation. And we actually think, you said it's personality, but we actually think that we have found some genetic markers that predict response to sleep loss. There are clearly going to be training effects, in this case for dogs, and sort of early exposure effects in how they're raised. But this idea of individual differences is something that you probably realize in your own life. There are people who completely fall apart when they don't get enough sleep, and others just have no problems. And that is very true, I believe, for dogs as well, from my personal experience and from what you would predict based on biology.
Hi, and I similarly wanted to expand on the basic concepts of individual differences in stress responsivity and basically the acute impact of stress. And so in our lab, kind of as a basic scientist, we're really interested in where those individual differences come from. And one is certainly genetics, which you can think of in dogs, but then also in the mice that I study as strain differences. And we do see, based on genetics, some morphisms or genes that we can track, differences in stress responsivity, so differences how much rodents will produce their glucocorticoid, which is corticosterone. It's equivalent to the cortisol, and we've measured in humans. But the other really big impact that we're interested in and that we study is the role of the environment, and particularly prior stress experience. And so this can be both direct or, as Cindy Otto mentioned, intergenerational. And so direct is kind of the impact we think of how individuals at certain periods of life are particularly susceptible. And really a big one is adolescence. And so one of my projects that we've been working on is studying how adolescents internalize stress and how that impacts the developing brain systems at the time, and how ultimately that will impact how you respond to stressors in adulthood. And the secondly is the stress experience that your parents were exposed to. So whether that's while you're in utero development, or even preconception. But those experiences will all sum up and add up to an individual's stress responsivity. And that's really one of the sources of where we can get this individual variability that we always want to be looking out for when we're characterizing what to look for when we're looking for any animal's response to stress.